The district has provided several pieces of standardized equipment to eliminate the manual lifting of students with physical limitations. Please understand, this video is designed to demonstrate the techniques used to assist in absorbent briefing and various toileting procedures, including toilet slings. If you have any questions regarding standardized equipment, lifting, and transfers, please contact a district physical therapist. Absorbent briefing and toileting are methods where infectious diseases can potentially be spread. Proper techniques and universal precautions must be used at all times. All employees responsible for absorbent briefing and toileting of students are encouraged to obtain their hepatitis B vaccinations, which are provided free of cost through risk management. To ensure student privacy, procedures should not be done within visibility of other students or staff members not participating in the procedure. Maintain respectful, courteous, and professional communication with students and staff at all times while performing any procedure. Never leave a student unattended. Always have at least 2 staff members assisting with toileting. It is recommended but not required that the identified gender of the student should match the identified gender of the 2 staff members assisting with care. Always use proper body mechanics and/or transfer equipment. Guidelines for proper body mechanics. Determine your plan for transferring and lifting. Position yourself close to the student or item you want to push, pull, or lift. Stand with your feet shoulder-width apart to give yourself a solid base of support. Bend at the knees. Tighten your stomach muscles. Lift, push, pull with your leg muscles. Keep your back straight without bending or twisting. If an object is too heavy or is an awkward shape, do not try to lift it by yourself. Have another staff member assist you. This is the wrong way to lift. This is the correct way to lift. Please review the transfer equipment training videos from Keenan. Students should be encouraged to participate in and assist with their own care according to their ability level. Mandated reporters are required by law to report all known or suspected cases of child abuse or neglect. It is not the job of the mandated reporter to determine whether the allegations are valid. If child abuse or neglect is reasonably suspected, or if a student shares information with a mandated reporter leading him or her to believe that abuse or neglect has taken place, a site administrator should be notified and a Riverside County Child Protective Services report must be filed. Remember, you are a mandated reporter. Absorbent briefing supplies, disposable brief, gloves, wet wipes, changing table paper roll, appropriate disinfectant for cleaning soiled or exposed surfaces, plastic-lined trash receptacle, changing table, urinal container if student utilizes one. Absorbent briefing procedure using changing table. Gather all needed materials. Cover the changing table with paper. If changing table paper is not available, ensure the disinfection of the changing table before and after changing procedure. Make sure the changing table is secure and locked in position or place. Discuss transfer plan with secondary staff member. Ensure privacy of the changing area. Wash hands and put on gloves. Explain the procedure to the student. Transfer student to changing table using proper body mechanics and proper equipment. Ensure the height of the changing table is at waist level. Remove clothing on the lower half of the body, exposing the perineal area. Attempt to preserve students' modesty by removing only the amount of clothes necessary to perform the procedure. While the student is lying on their back, remove the front section of the absorbent brief and wash the perineal area using wet wipes. For female students, wiping motion should always be front to back. Use a fresh wet wipe with each front-to-back wiping motion. If female student is being changed while lying down, you will start by cleaning the groin fold and both sides of the labia, top to bottom. Then you will separate the labial folds and wipe from top to bottom between the labial folds. Roll student to the side and proceed to clean the surface of the vaginal and anal area. Start by wiping the outside of the buttocks and end by wiping and cleaning the surface of the vaginal and anal area, always wiping front to back and using a fresh wet wipe with each wipe. For male students, if a student uses a urinal container, remove the front section of the absorbent brief and place the penis inside the urinal container. The container should be below the flow of urine tilted slightly downward. Maintain a secure hold of the container during the entire time that student is urinating. Close the top of the urinal container and place in a safe location. Proceed with change procedure. You will dispose of urine collected after the procedure with the student has been completed. If the male student is not circumcised, move the foreskin back and clean the glans penis or the head, wiping the area in a circular motion. Then proceed to clean the shaft of the penis around the scrotum and both sides of the groin folds, which is the fold where the pubic area meets the leg. If the student is not circumcised, end the procedure by moving the foreskin back over the glans penis. Finally, roll the student onto their side and clean the surface of the anal area, starting by wiping the outside of the buttocks and ending by wiping and cleaning the surface of the anal area. Always use a fresh wet wipe with each wipe. How to roll a student to one side using two staff members. Unlock the changing table brakes and move the table away from the wall so that a staff member is on either side of the changing table. Ensure the side rail opposite of the staff member performing the changing table is up and locked in place and is properly secured. If no railing is present, ensure the other staff member is on the other side of the changing table. To roll the student, bend and place the student's arm across their chest, then bend their leg at the knee. The staff member opposite of the bent arm and knee side will roll the student towards them using proper body mechanics and by providing support to the student's shoulder and hip to slowly guide the student onto their side. To roll in the opposite direction, lower the student onto their back and straighten their arm and leg. Repeat the rolling steps with the opposite staff member bending the student's arm and knee, and then rolling the student towards the opposite staff member with support on the student's shoulder and hip. Report any signs of visible skin break down to the site-assigned district nurse. Remove the brief, roll it together, ensuring the soiled part of the brief is facing inward, and place the soiled brief and wipes in the trash. Remove and discard soiled gloves in the trash and put on a clean pair of gloves. Place a clean brief on the student, ensuring that brief is aligned for maximum absorbency, and place clothes back on the student. Pull-up brief. Open up absorbent pull-up brief. Look for markings that note the front and back of the pull-up. Once the front side of the brief is identified, assist the student by inserting each foot through the holes of the brief. Pull up the brief carefully in order to ensure the brief does not rip or break. Pull up the brief past the knees. Assist the student to move side to side while pulling the brief up over the hips of the student. Tabbed brief. Open up brief with tabs. The widest part of the brief should cover the buttocks and should be placed face up with plastic side down. The top of the brief should lie just below the navel line. Position the two tabs evenly and on both sides of the student. Place the front section of the brief through the legs up on top of stomach and tucking into the student's hips. Pull up the sticker off the back tabs and pull the tabs across the hips of overlapping the material to secure the brief. Make sure the student's clothing is clean and dry. If not, change the student's clothing and send the soiled clothing home in a plastic bag. Transfer student off table. Dispose of urine collected in the urinal container and flush the toilet. Remove the changing paper and clean the surface of the changing table with district-approved cleaner or wipes. Cleaning supplies should be kept out of reach of students. Wash your hands and have the student wash his or her hands. Toileting. Toileting supplies, disposable brief if student requires one, gloves, toilet seat protector, wet wipes or toilet paper as appropriate, appropriate disinfectant for cleaning soiled or exposed surfaces, plastic-lined trash receptacle, urinal container if student utilizes one. Toileting procedure. Gather all needed materials. Discuss transfer plan with secondary staff member if student requires one. Ensure privacy of the changing area. Explain the procedure to the student. Wash hands and put on gloves. Place the toilet seat protector on the toilet seat. Instruct the student to utilize the grab bar. If student uses a wheelchair, wheel the student to the grab bar and lock the wheelchair securely in place. Have the student hold on to the grab bar. Encourage the student to stand and assist in removing only the amount of clothes necessary to perform the procedure. Provide assistance in removing disposable brief as needed. Assist with transferring the student onto the toilet. Have the student step close to the toilet and slowly guide the student to a seated position. Ensure the student is sitting safely on the toilet seat and not overly leaning on one side or the other. Staff members should support the student's shoulder while the student is leaning forward and assist the student with wiping if assistance is needed. Students should be encouraged to participate in their own care if they are able to do so. All wiping should be performed from front to back. Toilet paper should be disposed of in the toilet. Wipes and menstrual products should be disposed of in a plastic-lined trash receptacle. If gloves have come into contact with body fluids or soiled materials, wash hands and change gloves. If the student wears a pull-up brief and it has become soiled, remove and dispose of it at this time. If their clothing has become soiled, obtain a change of clothing and a waterproof bag to put soiled clothing in. Assist the student in changing their clothing and place soiled linens in the sealed waterproof bag. Females who are menstruating do not need additional pad absorbency if they already require a disposable brief. For females who are menstruating and do not require the use of a brief, make sure to check the menstruation pad each time while toileting to determine the level of saturation and assist the student with changing menstrual pad as needed. If gloves have come into contact with body fluids or soiled materials, wash hands and change gloves. While the student continues to hold on to the grab bar, guide the student to a standing position and provide assistance in replacing clothing as needed. Safely guide student back onto wheelchair if applicable. Ensure the area is clean and all used toileting supplies have been appropriately discarded. Wash hands and have student wash his or her hands. Gather all needed materials. Discuss transfer plan with the second staff member. Ensure privacy of the changing area. Explain the procedure to the student. Wash hands and put on gloves. Lock all wheels on the wheelchair to prevent the wheelchair from moving forward or backward. Making sure at least one assistant is supporting the student, remove wheelchair seatbelt and other fasteners. With the student sitting in a wheelchair, one assistant in front of the wheelchair and the other assistant in the back of the wheelchair, lean the student forward. The front assistant will be supporting the weight of the student while they are leaned forward. Place the sling behind the student. If properly positioned, the non-slip mesh will be against the student's back and the fabric behind their head and neck for support. With the student leaned forward, push the back of the sling down towards the seat. The back of the sling should be positioned with the lower edge of the sling about the level of the waistband. Lean the student back into the wheelchair with the assistant in behind the student, supporting his or her weight. Toileting slings have a waist buckle which helps hold the sling in place during positioning. Fasten the buckle and tighten the strap around their torso. Bring the leg straps forward and under the leg, lifting each knee to get the straps up high under the thigh. This is the key to a safe, comfortable transfer. Bring the Hoyer lift bar over to the student and lower it, being mindful not to let the bar come into contact with the student's face. Hook the loops of the straps over the hooks on the bar. Peel back the gray part of the strap to expose the colored loop before attaching the color loop to the hooks. Each strap has a series of loops. Match the corresponding colors on each side of the sling. Tops are the same color loop, middle are the same color, and the bottom are the same color loops. Begin lifting the student with the Hoyer lift. If the student's backside slides down through the sling, it is probably because the leg straps need to be moved further up under the thighs. Lower the student back into the wheelchair and reposition the leg straps higher towards the groin area. If the straps are placed correctly and the student is comfortable, lift and transfer the student over to the toilet. Transfer the student with one assistant guiding the sling and one assistant navigating the Hoyer. While the student is positioned over the toilet, proceed with clothing management. Loosen any pant fasteners, buttons, or zippers in the front of the student's clothing. Go to the student's backside and lower the waistband of the pants. If the student is wearing absorbent briefs while holding on to the waistband and gathering a large portion of the absorbent fabric, push the brief and the clothing downward and towards the knees so that the student's buttocks is exposed. Utilizing the remote, lower the student onto the toilet. Position the student to be centered and seated upright on the toilet. This can be achieved by pushing gently on the front of the student's knees to swing the student back over the commode and using the side grab handles to position the student in a more upright seated position. When seated on the toilet, use one assistant in front and one to the back and side to support the student. Remove strap loops from the Hoyer. Remove leg straps, and then lower pants and absorbent brief further down towards the knees. Gently lean the student forward and remove toilet sling from the student. Return the student to an upright, seated position. Fasten the seat belt and other support accessories of the adaptive toilet seat to the student. Lower pants and absorbent brief further down towards the knees. Lower pant clothing and absorbent brief further down towards the knees. If the brief is soiled, remove it at this time and dispose of it properly in the trash. If clothing has become soiled, obtain the student's change of clothing and a waterproof bag to put soiled clothing in. Change the student's clothing and place soiled linens in the sealed waterproof bag. If gloves have been used to change soiled materials, wash hands and change gloves. When the student is finished using the toilet, have the student wipe front to back, or assist the student in wiping front to back. Wash hands and change gloves after assisting with wiping the student. Gather and pull up absorbent brief and clothing as high to the groin as possible. With one assistant in front of the student and the other assistant to the back and side of the student for support, remove adaptive seat fasteners and reposition the toileting sling around the student. When positioning the leg straps, make sure that the student's gathered brief and clothing are above the top edge of the straps to make it easier to pull the clothing up. Hook the loops of the sling back onto the Hoyer lift. Check that the sling is comfortable for the student and safely secured. Begin lifting the student. When the student is a few inches above the toilet, additional wiping can be done easily if needed. Wash hands and change gloves after assisting with wiping the student. If the student has an absorbent brief, reposition it so that it is centered and not off to one side. While holding on to the gathered absorbent brief in the back, pull gently backwards and upwards. Once the absorbent center of the brief is properly positioned, pull up the sides of the brief or attach sticky tabs as appropriate. Gently pull gathered pant clothing up and backwards. Zip or fasten the front portion of their clothing. If the student's wheelchair is able to tilt backwards, tilt the chair slightly backwards. This will allow the student to be positioned as far back in the seat as possible when lowered into the wheelchair. Transfer the student back to their wheelchair with one assistant guiding the sling and one assistant navigating the Hoyer. Lower the student into their wheelchair and position them in the center of the wheelchair. With one assistant in front of the student and the other assistant behind the student for support, remove sling loops from the Hoyer lift. Remove the sling leg straps and unbuckle the waist strap. With the student sitting in a wheelchair, one assistant in front of the wheelchair and the other assistant behind the wheelchair, return the wheelchair to an upright seated position. Have the student lean forward so that the front assistant is supporting the weight of the student. The back assistant will remove the sling. Lastly, secure the wheelchair seatbelt and all other wheelchair supports and fasteners for the student to be secured safely in their wheelchair.